Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure for me to be at SPICE. Before starting further, I would like to thank everyone who has contributed to this work, especially people from, I think this is not working, but especially people from Munich. And as I moved from Munich, and a PhD student, Sina, from UCL London, Kurebayashi, for theoretical sport, Marcus Karst, and Maria Azhar, and Maxime Mostavoy from Netherlands. I have recently started in Augsburg as Eminuther group leader and busy in establishing the group. Here is just a bit of highlight. We recently got our cryo-free setup from Oxford, got installed, hired new PhD students. And in terms of facilities, we work on single crystal growth. The broad direction where we wanted to focus is finding new magnetic materials with ultra-low magnetic damping and skyrmions or other textures. In terms of growth, we mainly focus so far on oxides. One of the highlighted one is copper oxyselenate, and there are some others. Recently, we are moving from chiral magnets to frustrated magnets to map the phase diagram and learn about skyrmions. We do gigahertz microwave spectroscopy and resonance X-ray elastic scattering and some spin transport experiments. The resonance X-ray elastic scattering as well as skyrmions were beautifully introduced by many talks, starting from Marcus Karst and now the talk by Hegedal. So I will focus here in-house techniques too. In first part, I will talk about how the gigahertz dynamics of skyrmions appear in copper oxyselenate, very famous chiral magnet. And in second part, I want to use a magnetoresistive technique to detect skyrmions in these materials. Before going further to magnons, so we wanted to detect magnons in these systems. Let's look magnons in ferromagnets. So ferromagnets are, uniform ferromagnets are rather simple. You get Kittel mode and the dispersion is also rather simple. But when you go to skyrmions on your right side, as we already learned, they are beautiful non-uniform textures, but really periodic. So I'm talking about skyrmion lattices. So it breaks the translation and rotational symmetry of regular magnets. If you look in third direction, they trivially repeat themselves, making strings and becoming much more complex. But still very periodic. So what we wanted to see is in these textures, as when magnon propagates, there is modulated, spatially modulated effective magnetic fields. So the magnons will reflect from this periodicity, and it acts like crystal potential. So just like electrons in periodic potential, magnons develop band structure with natural gaps. I'm not showing you the full band structure what skyrmions have, skyrmion lattice have, but just k equal to 0 magnons. So the here in the pink region is the dispersion for skyrmions. So just instead of getting a single Kittel-like mode, you have 3 modes, clockwise, breathing counterclockwise, having a characteristic frequency as well as coupling behaviors. So here frequency as function of field, we see 2 modes, clockwise and counterclockwise, where the skyrmions have gyrational oscillations, and in the breathing mode, the core of the skyrmions expand and shrinks, giving a radial oscillation. So it's very well theoretically calculated spectra. Also experimentally, we can detect it. The important thing about these three modes, these are eigenmodes, carry a dynamic dipole moment, so you can detect them with ferromagnetic resonance type experiment. So to experimentally detect them, we use microwave, gigahertz microwave spectroscopy technique. We use a big single crystal as our magnetic systems are low temperature. We put in cryostat just on top of coplanar waveguide, several millimeter crystal, and use a vector network analyzer to send gigahertz signal, as well as for reading the transmitted changes in the power as S21 parameter. So when there is when this frequency, we sweep the frequency, when frequencies matches to the one of the eigenmodes, there is a resonant absorption and we see a dip. We track it as function of field or temperature and can learn about the dispersion of a specific mode. So this is broadband technique what we are using in lab. So to detect for copper oxyselenate, why it's so interesting is it's a chiral magnet, has no invariant symmetry, broken invariant symmetry. So you have finite Choleshinski-Moria interaction. This phase diagram only holds for bulk crystals, not when you thin them down. So it's 60 Kelvin magnet, very soft magnet, around 200 millitesla you can get to all the phases. So if you, at large magnetic field, it's just like a normal ferromagnet with all spins aligned parallel. As you reduce, the magnetization starts to twist, making cone-like structures, and then this cone expands to make helices. But the most interesting part about this system is this tiny pocket, which is skyrmion at high temperature, where skyrmions exist. Interestingly, there is a second pocket, low temperature skyrmion pocket, where you also have skyrmions in this copper oxyselenate crystal. But these two pockets are completely independent. Here it's due to thermal fluctuation stabilizes. However, the low temperature is due to cubic anisotropy and only appears along one of the 001 directions of the crystal. If you rotate the magnetic field, the skyrmions will disappear. There was a very nice talk by Martino, who showed that using the scanning squid, that if you go to the skyrmion pocket, this part, you don't immediately see skyrmions. You have metastable, distorted skyrmions and spirals coexisting here, and they beautifully imaged it. So to get a lattice formed, you have to cycle the magnetic field, then it makes a skyrmion lattice. We used resonance X-ray elastic scattering, and we saw that after cycling the field in this pocket, you can see this 6 spot related to the skyrmion lattice. We saw 12 because of more than one domain. But indeed, you can cycle and see skyrmions. There is much more things going on at the surface, but it agrees with what people have seen in neutron scattering. Now, you have 2 skyrmion pockets, one at high temperature, one at low temperature. So here is the theory. So if you take a theoretical model to see what type of k equal to 0 magnons, you will see dispersions for them. So for the skyrmion, if you do not introduce cubic anisotropy, you see 3 modes associated with skyrmions, clockwise, breathing mode, and counterclockwise. However, the interesting thing happens if you take into account the cubic anisotropy, and this breathing mode orange line splits by introducing the cubic anisotropy. It happens because the There are many other higher order modes which does not carry dynamic dipole, and we cannot detect them, but they are there. And one of the mode hybridizes with this breathing mode, and becomes accessible in the experiment. So this is an indirect way. We are not measuring anisotropy contribution, but somehow we can get hand-on understanding their importance here. So in theory, we also see that due to cubic anisotropy, at low temperature, skyrmions get distorted from triangular lattice. They become a little bit elongated skyrmion lattice. Now let's talk about experiment. Before experiment, let's see here. For the first, when you do not have cubic anisotropy, you can see this lattice just expanding and shrinking, giving a contrast in red and green colors due to change in the Z magnetization component. However, when you introduce cubic anisotropy, you see this flower-like texture, meaning it's rotating also along with breathing. And so experimentally we can detect it. We use microwave spectroscopy technique. You see frequency here. Here is the high field going towards 0. So you first see the Kittel mode and many standing spin waves due to low damping of the material. And interesting thing is happening in this square where we have skyrmions. So we can see this hybridization of the breathing mode. So it's what is theoretically predicted. And we can also see a distorted phase, which is not here very clear, but one can see the hybridization. It is not only possible to measure in the ferromagnetic resonance type experiment, but it is beautifully shown in the group of Derek Grunzer by BLS Brilliant light scattering experiments in this paper, that there are higher order modes of skyrmions which exist there, and they also hybridize with eigenmodes of skyrmions. Now I have introduced how the skyrmion lattice have different types of modes, and the surface plays an important role. Here is an interesting result which I wanted to show here. About the low temperature skyrmion pocket, if you go to that pocket, you don't see immediately skyrmions. So meaning you won't see these 3 eigenmodes immediately. You have to cycle, and then you can see these eigenmodes related to the skyrmion lattice. But if you put on this bulk crystal a thin permalloy magnetic layer, you can pin these skyrmions and can detect these eigenmodes related to the skyrmion lattice immediately without any field cycling. So this result shows that somehow you can manipulate the surface and make the skyrmions get pinned and stabilize, promote them at the surface. Now I would like to summarize about this dynamics of the skyrmion lattice here. So I showed you that there are 2 skyrmion pockets in this material. The interesting thing about this material is as you cool down, the damping of magnon damping actually decreases. At 4 Kelvin, the damping is 10 to power minus 4, which is still not as good as yttrium iron garnet, which is the best magnetic insulator with 10 to power minus 5 damping. But it is still reasonably good, and cubic anisotropy plays an important role, not only stabilizing this lattice, but also it changes the dynamics and you get access to dark modes of the skyrmions. One interesting thing is, as this skyrmion pocket has low damping and skyrmions has short-term memory, it has been recently shown that copper oxyselenate, the skyrmion pocket can be used for neuromorphic computing or reservoir computing, which is interesting. But for real quantum applications, we still need clean systems, tiny skyrmions, and low damping. But to find out new systems, I would like to address a little bit of the question that how we can electrically detect them without having this microwave spectroscopy technique. So this brings me to second part of my talk, where we use a magnetoresistance, spin Hall magnetoresistance technique to detect skyrmions in this material. Here is the device configuration. So the schematic shows that we always apply the field within the plane of the sample, so meaning our skyrmion tubes are always aligned within the plane. The crystal looks like that. So we have a big crystal, we polish the crystal and make a device by putting platinum on top. And the idea is that we want to use, measure the resistance of platinum, and we want to see if we can detect skyrmions, both skyrmion pockets in this material. For this, spin Hall magnetoresistance, in short known as SMR, is a very well-known technique. It makes use of spin Hall effect, where you use a heavy metal with large spin orbit coupling. When you send a charge current, it gets spin dependent scattering, and you get a small spin accumulation at the edges. And this spin accumulation can interact with a magnetic insulator. So this green is a magnetic insulator. So depending on the magnetization direction, if it's perpendicular to your accumulated spin at interface, the spin current will be absorbed, giving rise to a higher resistance in platinum. But if you rotate the magnetic field and magnetization rotates, there will be at some point no spin torque effect, and there will be no change in resistance. In this way, by rotating the magnetic field, you expect to have an angular dependence of resistance of platinum due to spin Hall magnetoresistance effect. So, so far so good. It's valid for all materials, yttrium, iron, garnet, all magnetic insulators. The interesting part is this phase phi. So for normal magnetic insulators, you expect a sinusoidal dependence, and phi is the angle between magnetization and applied magnetic field. For uniform magnets is 0, so everything nice. You should see proper sinusoidal dependence. But what if we have surface twist or any type of twist of magnetization, or we have a texture spiral or skyrmion? Then you can imagine that your magnetization will not follow the applied magnetic field, and there will be a finite phi. So if you measure now spin Hall magnetoresistance, you expect to see a shift with respect to this phi for your angle dependence. And this is actually the key point here. So if I have any twist in my magnetization, I should be sensitive to it, whether it's a texture or whatever. So now let's look to copper oxyselenate at high magnetic field. It's just like a collinear magnet, and we see proper sinusoidal dependence of this resistance. But as you reduce magnetic field and go to spiral phases, you can see a shift of the angular dependence by a phase which is almost 90 degree. And as you go to multi-domain state, you see a non-sinusoidal behavior, and it agrees well with theory. So you can detect whether it's a single domain state or it has a twist. You can measure the angle dependence and fit the data and plot the amplitude as well as this phase phi separately to understand different phases more systematically. Before explaining it or going deep into it, let's look to theory of spin Hall magnetoresistance. The spin Hall magnetoresistance is expected to have two terms. The first term is unique for all ferromagnets, all uniform magnets. So the first term is magnetization density, and is expected to be large for all magnets, yttrium, iron, garnet, when it's in the fully collinear state. And when you have some sort of uniform twist, the SMR is expected to decrease. The most interesting part to take here is the second term of spin Hall magnetoresistance, which is only valid for skyrmions or spirals where you have spatial variation of magnetization. So according to this theory, you expect to have a large spin Hall magnetoresistance once you have a skyrmion or spiral compared to a collinear magnetic state. Let's see if that's valid. So here is experimentally observed amplitude and phase. So as these chiral magnets prefer to twist at the surface, so that's why we do not see a zero phase in field polarized state, which is what we expect, but we see a relatively small phase, and as we go to spirals, we see a 90-degree phase. Now looking to the amplitude red curve, we see indeed almost 4 times larger signal in a spiral phase compared to a collinear state. Now looking to can we detect skyrmions, here is the amplitude of spin Hall magnetoresistance plotted. So if you, so this amplitude is plotted as a color code, and the changes in the color shows the change in the amplitude of spin Hall magnetoresistance. So in the tiny pocket at high temperature, we expect to see skyrmions. And if you take line scan, we do see a dip and we have some sensitivity to skyrmions, but the drastic changes has been observed in the phase. So phase goes, changes drastically, and we see very clearly when they are skyrmions or not, no skyrmions. So to some extent, for high temperature pocket, we have seen that there is a sensitivity to skyrmions, and we can see by spin Hall magnetoresistance whether there are skyrmions or spirals or it's collinear. Now the question arises, can we see about the low temperature skyrmion pocket? So for the low temperature skyrmions, it's a little bit complex story, because when you go into these low temperature skyrmions, you have distorted skyrmion lattice, and if you measure the if you want to measure this pocket, you have to apply the field along one of the 001 directions. Here is the amplitude of the magnetoresistance plotted. So we immediately see this tiny pocket where we expect to see tiny peak, where we expect to see skyrmions due to distorted skyrmion phase. And if we cycle within this pocket, here is in the insert shown for 100 times cycling staying within the pocket, we can see an increase on this peak. So to some extent, we are sensitive to skyrmions also in the low temperature skyrmion pocket. To confirm whether we are really looking to skyrmions, we did resonance X-ray elastic scattering, and in this field region we did cycling, and the intensity of the peak related to skyrmions increases. So comparing these two, we believe we are sensitive to low temperature skyrmion pocket also. Before concluding this part, I would like to show you how this technique can be useful or relevant. So the according to spin Hall magnetoresistance theory, we are sensitive. So the second term with B, we are sensitive to texture which spatially vary. But this term is drastically large if your textures are tight and really tiny skyrmions, tiny spirals. For copper oxyselenate, the pitch is 60 nanometer, but there are many materials where spirals are like 10, 20 nanometer, or spin frustrated systems. So this technique seems more interesting for such systems where spirals are really tiny. Why this technique can be useful is because we do not get very quickly the beam times for resonance X-ray elastic scattering or neutrons. So it is an in-house technique. The second part is the phase diagram for new materials is rather big, especially for spin frustrated systems. Up to several Tesla, they are spread out. So finding where the skyrmions are usually tricky. So maybe this technique can be relevant there. So with this, I have shown you two different aspects of copper oxyselenate crystal. One is related to its dynamics. So by doing ferromagnetic resonance, we can see that cubic anisotropy changes its dynamic as well as plays important role in stability of skyrmions. We also worked with magnetoresistance to detect the 2 fermion pocket. To some extent we have sensitivity. With this, I will look, thank you very much for your attention, and I will look forward for questions.